I don't know what you've noticed about this, but we've been in a world where there's been an explosion of attention and at the same time an erosion of the attention span. And this is something that I've just been noticing year in, year out. I noticed this very heavily when I used to be a teacher. I noticed it even more when I became a teacher trainer. And I noticed it even more when I actually became financially free, replacing my wife's income and then my income. We have an explosion of things attempting to take our attention, and we're dealing with an erosion of people's attention spans. And the reason why I wanted to do this video is because I slightly feel like they're both connected. And if you are a parent or grandparent, if you are a spouse with a partner in your house, then this is probably going to be super vital for you, because as a qualified educator, one of the things I discovered is, well, they say this in personal development quite a lot. We get what we focus on. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the law of attention, but I'll share it with you. The law of attention states that nothing is as important as when we place all of our attention on it. Okay? So if you are thinking about something with all your attention, your full attention, that thing is not as deep as how much attention you're putting on it. Okay? And this might be the reason why my first of these daily videos was the video It Ain't That Deep, because I came to the realization that there are things that I have placed my attention on to such a high level which aren't actually that deep, which aren't actually that important. But the reason that happens, or the reason that happened for me, is because my attention was there. My attention was on the fact that I only cut my hair usually once a week, typically, right? And if I'm cutting my hair once a week, but I'm doing videos every single day, then how am I going to be presented? I'm going to look different in these videos. Like some days I might have my beard out with a few gray hairs, right? And these were things that genuinely concerned me as a person who has spoken on stage for years, as a person who has worked from home for years, as a person who probably like comes across like he doesn't really care what other people think too much. It's interesting to think about the fact that you actually do think about what other people think. Enough to delay you, maybe even derail you, definitely to distract you from doing these videos and adding value to you. So it was that deep, which is why I had to do the day one video and say it ain't that deep and talk about how it ain't that deep, because I had to come to that realization. And I think another rich, worthy realization for all of us is the realization I'm talking about today, which is the fact that there is actually an explosion of things attempting to take our attention. And a lot of people are blaming it on social media. A lot of people are saying, well, you know what? It's because social media, people scroll. I don't know if that's actually the reality, because social media is only a modern version of the television, which we had before. And people manage the television. And I get it, like social media is kind of like the television on steroids. I get that. But I don't know. I've got to leave that rabbit hole, because otherwise I'll get too contemplative on it. But I do think it's vital for us as parents, for us as, partners in our relationships, to think about this encroaching, treacherous explosion of attention and how it has an intention. Because a lot of the things attempting to take our attention don't have our best intentions at heart. A lot of the things trying to take our attention actually have its own agenda at heart. It has an agenda which is not to prosper your children, which is not to prosper you and your family, which is not to help you do what the Bible says in the book of Proverbs, which is to establish you as a good man who can leave an inheritance for your children's children. So if the explosion of attention is not necessarily for or in our favor, then we need to fight against it. We need to do something to at least protect ourselves against it, even if we can't take a proactive stance and fight against it. And this is where the second part of this whole situation really starts screaming at me, because I noticed that married to this explosion of attention is the erosion of the attention span. More and more people today are saying they deal with ADHD. More and more people today are saying they've got dyslexia. More and more people today are saying they're dealing with dyspraxia. More and more people today are saying they've got whatever it is, okay? Whatever the labels are that are coming out now. And I get it. Like, we're all intelligent enough to say, well, in my day, they didn't even assume you had any of this. They just told you you weren't listening. Okay, I get it, right? And I get that before my day, if you go back to the 60s and the 70s, there was no such thing as even a diagnosis for half of these things. But the reality is, the world's changing, guys. The world is genuinely changing. It is naturally changing. If you work in schools, if you work in education, if you are a parent, you got children, you're going to see it in your face. The world is changing. More and more is it becoming acceptable to not pay attention for long enough. More and more is it becoming acceptable to not be able to actually just read a book. More and more is it becoming acceptable to make excuses for why people can't do today what was easy for them to do in the previous days. And I'm not saying this to say we shouldn't embrace technology. I'm not saying this to say we shouldn't leverage technology. I'm one of the first people to encourage my coaching clients, my students, the people around me, my community, to take advantage of their advantages. I believe technology is definitely one of our advantages. However, I also understand that if we lose the skills that made us able to have technology in our current time frame, then that technology actually becomes of more value than we do as the harnessers of the technology. It's like a mobile phone, right? A person or a team may create a mobile phone, and the masses of people may use the mobile phone. But the moment the masses of people use the mobile phone to the detriment of their ability to understand how to create a mobile phone, then the mobile phone becomes more powerful than all the people. And the question, I think, which is important for us to ask is how many generations, how many decades, how many centuries, how many years does it take to catch up again? Because there's only one of two things that can happen in that kind of experience. I'm going to explain both of them. The first one is a small group of people will continue to understand how to control the attention grabbing resources. They may be devices, they may be platforms, they may be content, okay? A small group of people are going to always know how to control that. And the overwhelming majority of people are not going to know how to control it. That's one way that could go, okay? The information is kept with the quote-unquote elites, and everyone else is out of the farm and can't compete, okay? That's one way. The other way it goes is everybody becomes void of this information. Everybody becomes void of this organized information. Everybody becomes void of the gems of how to control or create the resources that have stolen the world's attention. Okay, now imagine a world like that. Imagine a world where all the people, the smart engineers, the technicians, the people that created these devices, the people that created these platforms, the people that created this content, imagine a world where over decades or over years, those people do not any longer exist. And now the rest of the world, the rest of us, are left without the knowledge of how to control the devices, how to create the devices that are creating all of the vices. So everyone's got the mobile phone, everybody's got the smart watch, everybody's got the chip in their hand. And nobody actually understands how to work the chip in the hand. Just think about a world like that. And now think to yourself, if the world became like that, how long would it take for the world to quote unquote get back? How long will it take for people to realize, hold on a minute, we should have a harness of technology. Hold on a minute, we should understand how to control this technology. Hold on a minute, we should understand how to create this technology. How long would it take to get back? Now, I don't know the answer to that. And I love speaking with you. So you let me know in the comments below how long you think that will take. Because the reality is, it doesn't matter how long it will take. Either of those worlds are not a world that I think any of us would like to sign up to. I don't think there's anyone who would like to live in a world where an elite control the creation of these resources and these mechanisms that steal everybody else's attention. And I equally don't think there's anyone who would like to live in a world where no one in the world understands how to create or control the mechanisms that are stealing and creating and controlling everyone's attention. So the question is, well, what do we do about it? Because let me tell you what most people are going to do about it. Most people are going to think, well, Samuel, that's never going to happen. And by virtue of assuming that that will never happen, guess what? They never start rapping. They never stop clapping, right? Most people are not going to do anything about it because to them, like, Samuel, what are you talking about? Like, you're just ranting. And the reality is, maybe I'm just ranting because I've got 6 children that I care about with every single iota of my flesh, body, and being. Maybe I am just ranting. Or maybe what I'm talking about is 100% valid. Maybe my 1-year-old today could grow up to live in a world where that could be a possibility. And maybe I'm just thinking a bit ahead. Maybe even a bit too far ahead than most of us usually think to think this. But what would happen? And the reality is, in the world that we live in right now, where there's an explosion of attention, but there's actually an erosion of the attention span, I can guarantee you it's only a matter of time until there becomes a specific kind of clan. That clan is going to be the elite clan. That clan is going to be the people that are going to stop everyone else from being able to compete. Because just look at what's happening in the world. Look at what's happening in the world from the financial perspective. Now, my hope is that you're not watching this with doom and gloom. My hope is that you're watching this and you're understanding how to navigate the room. One of the ways to navigate the room is to fix your financial situation. Understand about cash flow creation. Understand, as I usually define, cash flow is the key to income replacement and ultimately the key to be financially free. You see, without freedom, what happens is we lose our time. And it's our time stuck in the attention grabbing mechanisms that we need to be able to look at what's really going on. If you don't own your time today, you are going to find it extremely difficult to look at what your time could look like tomorrow. You see, the sooner a man and a woman, a man or a woman begins to own their time, or as the Bible calls it, buy back their time. The Bible says redeeming the time because the days are evil. And if you study that verse, what you find is redeeming means to buy back. The time means the time. But that word evil in that verse doesn't mean evil as in sin and wickedness. It means evil in the form of hard. So we're encouraged in the Bible to buy back our time because the days are becoming hard. So if you look ahead and say to yourself, well, based on how the world's been going, what's it going to look like in the next 5 years? Based on how the world's been going, what's it going to look like in the next 10 years? Based on how the world's been going, what's it going to look like in the next 15 years? And again, if you're a parent or a grandparent, just match that to your child's or your grandchild's age. If you've got a child like I have right now who is 1, in 15 years from now, they will be 16. And what's the world potentially going to look like? Because a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. And our job is to leave an inheritance for those their very children. And what worth is the inheritance if the inheritance does not support them, does not assist them in the world they're actually being flung into? That's the question we have to answer. And as we start to attempt to answer that question, guess what we're going to realize? We're going to realize we're living in a world where there's been an explosion of people's attention being grabbed, but there's been an erosion of people's attention spans. And this is why it's so important for us to cultivate in our homes a high level of attention span. I want to encourage you to read more. I want to encourage you to lead more. I also want to encourage you to feed more. And by feed more, I do not mean feed me, see more. For those of you who know, you know, right? I don't mean feed food. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about feed the same things that I spoke about earlier. Feed what you read. Feed how you lead. You see, the world would be a very different place if we instilled what we read into those we are called to feed. The world would be a very different place if we instilled how we lead into those we are called to feed. What would happen if that 2-year-old in your house was trained on how to develop their attention span? So whilst the rest of the world, the masses, if we call it that, are having their attention gobbled up, your 2-year-old has an attention span which allows them to create a plan that other people can follow and say, oh man, what would happen? What would happen? I can tell you what would happen. Your child will be a child of significance in their future. I can tell you what would happen. My child will be a child of significance in their future. I can tell you what would happen. My child and your child will probably connect because they will be people of significance in the future. And I'm not talking about textbook attention span. And this is not my rant against the school system and textbooks, okay? It says education. I'm hardcore on education. I believe in education. It is the key for every nation. But what I'm talking about is true education. The kind of education that creates elevation. The kind of education that removes hesitation. The kind of education that creates transformation. I'm talking about real education. The kind of education, when your child speaks to you, you say to yourself, someone planted some gold in this one. The kind of education that when your child is in a seminar, listening to a sermon, or even hearing a song, they've got their journal out and they are taking notes all night long, proverbially. I'm talking about that kind of education. I'm talking about the kind of education that when we look at our next of kin, we say, wow, someone's done a great thing. The kind of education where we recognize that someone has given us something of value beyond the value we could give to ourselves. I'm talking about the kind of education that allows us to recognize what the Bible said when it said, listen, children are a heritage from the Lord. They're a blessing. They're not an inconvenience. They're not a curse. And I guess I understand that that kind of education cannot be achieved in this current world with the explosion of attention, unless we focus our attention and intention on encouraging our children to remain having an attention span which is beyond the world's current plan. And it's possible. It's definitely possible. It's possible because in every nation of the world, we see the most resilient individuals always stand. We see countries go to war and we still see the most resilient individuals find a way to stand. And it might take a generation, it might take a decade, it might take years, it might take time. But nonetheless, we always see the resilience of the people to stand. And I guess today's video is really my clarion call to you. I know we started talking about the attention span and we started talking about the explosion of the attention. I get it. But what does this really boil down to? What it really boils down to is the simple fact that you and I have a responsibility beyond our own lives. It's the responsibility to make our lives of value to other lives. And I understand that the only way we can do that is by instilling in those other lives something of value to them. And some of us might feel like, well, Samuel, I don't even have value to instill into the next generation. That's more reason why you should now start developing your attention span. You should now start filling yourself up with the good news, the information, the organization, and the transformation so you can pass that on to the next generation. That's why it's incumbent upon us. And I get it, guys. We're watching this video. We're thinking it's just a video. Like, he's just talking. Okay, cool. But what would happen if you took the content of this video and used it to be a seed to give you everything you need? Because seeds become trees. And the reason I've got to be this real in this video is because I understand something. I understand that it was a video not too different to this that changed my life in 2004/2005. When I sat down and I watched a video of a man in a seminar explaining how to have your best year ever. And it was literally just a man talking into a microphone. But guess what it did? It changed my world. As a young man who had been released from prison the second time, who had even celebrated his 18th birthday in prison, I can assure you that video changed my world. So much so that later on in 2005, later on that year, I watched another video by a man in a seminar similar to this, breaking down and talking about how you should or could set goals. And guess what? Changed my life. Equally, the same year, 2005, watched a man talking into a microphone, very similar to this, talking about the power of using a journal. Again, changed my life. And I get it. We live in a world right now where the deep conversation, you see, when I was young, if you ever spoke to someone about like more important things than your day-to-day lifestyle, we used to call that a deep conversation. And you might always have one of those deep conversations with someone, but you could never really put your finger on what it was that was a deep conversation. I submit to you, I now understand what a deep conversation is. A deep conversation is not an intellectually dense conversation. It's not a conversation where we start going deep intellectually. I used to think it was that. But what I realized when I looked back at the conversations we would say were deep conversations, they were conversations which had spiritual essence sprinkled throughout them, even though we were talking with natural elements. So we're talking just like this, but a spiritual element exists. And something's pricking us in the heart in the conversation. Something's touching us on the inside in the conversation. Something's doing more than just work on our mind in the conversation. The other day I was in a conversation with one of my social media team members and she said, Samuel, what you're saying is convicting me. Maybe it's the conviction. Maybe it's something more than conviction. But it's just when we feel it on the inside, you know what, this message was meant for me. I think when we have those moments, that's when we say, yeah, you know what, Samuel, I just had a deep conversation. And my hope and my prayer is just like how in 2004/2005, I watched a video and I felt like I was being spoken to. My hope and my prayer is just like how later on in 2005, I watched the video and felt like I was being spoken to. And even additionally, in that same year, 2005, I watched another video and felt like I was being spoken to. My hope and my prayer is that this video becomes that for you. Because it's only one person that needs to have the impact to understand that I've been allowing all of these things to take my attention instead of me sitting down and working on building up my retention. Instead of sitting down and building on making sure that I have an adequate attention span, instead of giving away all my attention to other people with a completely different plan. Now, I'm going to say this because I think this is so pertinent to say. Maybe I should have said it earlier. I get it. If you feel as though what you're giving your attention to is of value to you, is of value to where you desire to go to, then by all means continue to invest your attention in that and in those things. But if you're kind of like me and you can step into honesty and say, you know what, Samuel, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I'm engaging with which actually isn't got my best intentions at heart, and it definitely is taking all my attention, then I want to encourage you to do something. I want to encourage you to make a stand. Make a stand today that you're not going to pay all of your attention away. Make a stand today that you are going to say, I'm building my attention span. I'm not giving all my attention away to someone else with a contrary plan. Just make that declaration today. Because if you make that declaration today and you do one thing, just even one thing to support you in that declaration, your child, your children, your grandchildren, your next generation, your next of kin, your spouse in your house will thank you for it, I assure you. Now, if you would like me to share ways, I was going to say a number, but the number don't matter. If you would like me to share specific tactical and practical ways that we can develop our attention span and not give away our attention to people with a contrary plan, I would love for you to let me know in the comments below, and feel free to share anything else that stood out to you in this video. This is Sammy I Can Win. I'm signing out. Good day, God bless, lots of love, and remember, small keys open up big doors. Let's go.